Hello friends, for today's video I'm going to be doing the mid-year book tag. I actually took these questions and applied them to my reading for the first quarter, thus I'm actually going to only be pulling from my second quarter's reading and answering these questions. If you are curious about my first quarter's reading, I'll have the same style of video but for that first quarter linked in the description bar. For today, as noted, we're just going to be looking at quarter two's reading, so I'm slightly going to shift the questions from first half of the year to second quarter of the year. And then one last thing to note is that because this is more of a recap style of video, I want to ensure that this also serves somewhat as a directory. I'm not going to go incredibly in depth with any of these books. However, if there are videos where I have gone more in depth, I'll have them linked in case you'd like to hear more about any of these books. Jumping into it, the first question is what's the best book that you have picked up? And for me, I think that my second quarter's standout was Dragon Mage. This one, the more I sit on it, the more I just sort of miss it, the more it makes me want more books like it. And in a way where I feel this is in part because we don't have as many books right now that are like this. The setup for the story is that you follow two young boys. One of them is someone who definitely feels like he is set apart from a lot of other kids his age. He just feels different. He feels like he doesn't process things the same way as everybody else. However, the other boy that is our main perspective is really kind to him. He has this sort of brotherly affection toward him, and the two of them are fantastic friends, but danger comes to this small village that they live in when it's discovered that one of these boys has magical abilities and then the other one actually is immune to the effects of magic. And these things are very significant to their world because there aren't very many people that have magic within them that have this sort of essence, and it is through this essence that sorcerers are able to fight back against the threats to their world. And thus what they end up doing to people that they do discover have essence is that they figure one individual with essence is not as strong as an entire army of people with some essence, so they will take these people that have these sort of conduit abilities, they'll take them and they'll strip them of their essence and then they'll give them to the sorcerers so that you can create this army out of single individuals. And it is not a good existence. It is a very painful process, but there are high stakes because if this isn't done, then there are threats to their world that could impact everybody else. And you don't really know all of the details. It's one of the aspects of discovery that you have within this story. But regardless, you don't want one of these boys to have to experience this life. You don't want them to just become this thing that is extracted from all the time, and then you don't want the other boy to have to watch this happen and protect the very sorcerers who would be using their friend. So there's a lot at stake right away, and their friendship is absolutely lovely. The world is very much a sort of nostalgic return to a lot of the epic fantasy that I know so many of us miss. So I just loved so many aspects of this. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. That would probably be my main standout of the second quarter. The second question is what's the best sequel that you've picked up? And I'm going to go in a slightly different direction than I feel is the intent of this. I'm actually going to mention some volumes of manga, and that would be Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Like a lot of other people who have checked Frieren out, I initially started it through the anime, and I did very much enjoy the anime, but we only have one season out, so I decided to continue on with the manga. And around volume 7 is where the show leaves off. So if you pick up volume 7, you pretty much just pick up straight where the show left off. And I have liked so much of Frieren so far, but actually the last arc that's explored within the first season of the show might have been my least favorite arc thus far. And it was nice because once you get into this next arc that is within those next few volumes of the manga, I really feel like it's okay. I have to backtrack because I gotta explain aspects of Frieren. So Frieren is kind of this slice of life, reflective, slow-moving story, and it's really sad and melancholy but hopeful at the same time, and it's really about enjoying life, enjoying the people in your life, the way relationships matter, and to value the time that you have, and all the little things are precious. And there's a lot of really sweet things in its themes, but also, like I said, the reflective sort of melancholy themes as well. So where I think that this story often shines is in its smaller moments, and the reason that the one arc toward the end of the first season was one of my least favorites, is because I feel like we had a little bit of a detachment from those themes, and we were more so locked into a sort of, if you've played JRPGs or you're familiar with a lot of fantasy, we have this sort of exploring this dungeon arc that I've seen a fair amount of before, and I missed the other things that Frieren, the reasons that it stood out to me. I missed those things. And there was an arc earlier in the story that I feel like was a great combination of world building and stakes. It's one of the earlier, longer arcs in the story. So I'm like, okay, I know we can have longer arcs within Frieren that still feel impactful. I just didn't feel that as much on the last one, but I did earlier. So I'm like, if we could get another longer arc that I really like, I'm definitely not in opposition to that. I would love that. And I do feel like we're there with what's happening in the volumes after. Didn't I start this by saying I'm just going to give an overview and I'm not going to get too in depth, and I'm like, let me explain though. So sorry, let's move on to the next question. Question 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to, The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I'm considering doing a reading vlog for this. I'm nervous. I'm really quite nervous that I'm going to not love it. I just love Age of Madness so much, and my husband is reading First Law, and it makes me so happy. So I feel like I'm kind of reliving First Law through him, and then I'm just appreciating foreshadowing and things like that, because you start to feel like you understand what the author does the more that you read their works, and so it's like, I see what that was there. And anyway, so I love the rest of Abercrombie's works so much, or I should say his adult works. I love them so much, and I'm a little nervous about The Devils, so maybe I'll love it, but maybe I won't, so I think I'll do a reading vlog for that one. But I have this thing in my head where, because it's such an anticipated release, and because I've kind of hyped it up for myself of like, oh my gosh, it's Abercrombie's new book, because of that, I feel like I have to have nothing going on. I need to feel caught up in my other reading, I need to feel caught up on editing, on filming, and house stuff, because there have been more things that have happened around my house that have been really stressful, like thousands of dollars worth of damage type of stuff that isn't our fault. It's just part of life. So I keep feeling like I can't have anything going on. I need to just have everything set aside so I can enjoy this story. And that's probably a stupid way to go about things, because when is life ever, peaceful and calm? But I'll read it soon. I definitely plan to read it soon. And I am looking forward to it, I think. Question 4 is the most anticipated upcoming release, and the answer for me for this one would be the third book in the Age of Uprising, Engines of War. I've been highly anticipating this next installment every single time I pick up a book in the series, which has been twice so far because it's the third book. But the 2 times that I picked up books in the series before, as soon as I was done, I was like, man, this is one of those times where obviously most of us, when we pick up a book and we like it, we want the next one. But this one really, it was painful to not have the next installment. And because it's a new series, that is going to just always be the case. So I'm really excited to finally have this third book coming out. It's not out at the time I'm filming this, so it'll be out very soon. Question 5 is the biggest disappointment. And the book that I'm going to mention wasn't by any means something that I despised, I hated, I was wanting to pull my hair out because I was so frustrated by it. It was nothing like that. It's just, I feel like this is one of those authors who, on paper, their work sounds like it would fit my tastes. And when I hear people talk about the other work that I tried by this author, I'm always like, do I need to try it again? So the book would be The Night and the Moth. This author also wrote One Dark Window. And when I picked up One Dark Window, it was around when it first came out, and there wasn't really a lot of buzz for it at the time. I picked it up, and I actually ended up DNFing it. And not because, once again, not because I hated it or anything, just because I really found myself never feeling particularly invested. And there's something about the world building that's always intriguing and really cool, but it feels almost ethereal. And that's not to say that the author doesn't lay it out for you or make it clear, and it's not like there's this intentional, I'm keeping you in the dark. That's not what it is at all. It's just something about the way that the author lays the world out for you that I just don't seem to be able to connect with. And another author that I've mentioned I have similar feelings toward would be Adrienne Young's works. Every time I see a synopsis for one of their books and I try one of their books, of which I've tried 3 or 4, I always come away from them being like, why didn't I like that more? And I think this might be a similar situation because after reading One Dark Window, or I should say after DNFing One Dark Window, all of a sudden I was seeing so many people love it and they thought it was fantastic. And even some of my friends would ask me like, oh, have you checked out One Dark Window? It was really cool. And I was like, do I just need to try that one again? But rather than trying One Dark Window again, when I saw The Night and the Moth was going to be coming out, I thought, let me pick this one up and maybe it'll be better to wait for a while before trying One Dark Window again and instead try this newer work. And I picked up The Night and the Moth, and I had that same feeling again, where aspects of the world building, I did not DNF it, I did read the whole thing, but aspects of the world building would really suck me in, and I'd be like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then stuff would shift, and I'm like, I don't really care about this plot. And then I'd get sucked in a little bit more, and I'd be like, oh, I like the shift where it feels like it's almost horror leaning now, what's happening? And then the plot would twist, and I'm like, I don't care. And it was just this back and forth. And then I didn't really care for the ending, so that kind of sealed the deal for me. And maybe it's just one of those it's not you, it's me situations where there's just something about this author's work that I don't quite click with. But I was disappointed because I was really hopeful that I would be able to get into their work this go around, and unfortunately it just didn't end up working out that way. The next question is the biggest surprise. And I'm going to have to give this to Stormglass, and it's a surprise in a good way, as this is something I picked up for the steampunk video that I am forever working on. I'm so sorry that this is taking much longer to get out than I had originally intended. But Stormglass is one of the books that I picked up for that, and it's not particularly popular or talked about, and I had just tried to get as many of the recommendations that I was given as possible. I tried to get as many from the library and such things, and figured I'm going to try to just really consume all the steampunk, the well-known ones, the ones that people point to as like this is representing the subgenre really well, and the ones that maybe are lesser known. I wanted a wide variety, and Stormglass was one of the ones that it's not as easily accessible or available. I don't see it talked about very often, and I was actually really excited about that. I just didn't know what I was getting into, and I quite liked it. I thought that the world was interesting. I liked the characters quite a bit. I liked the thematic elements that had to do with class and the ways that there is in our societies, and in their society, I should clarify, but also you can obviously extrapolate that and apply it to our own society. But the ways that you have just this distinct difference between people with wealth and people without it, and the ways that people look at each other and view each other because of this, I was just finding myself quite invested. And it did, of course, have steampunk elements, which I enjoyed, but it had a feeling to it. There's something about the tone of the story that reminded me the tiniest bit of Fireborn, the Aurelian Cycle by Rosario Munda. And it's not the same kind of story, but there's just something about the way the story unfolds that was somewhat reminiscent of that. And I'm really looking forward to continuing on with that series and seeing what happens next. The next question is new favorite author, and there's two I want to mention. One would be Richard Swan, and the other would be Elizabeth Lim, as I have picked up books by them within the second quarter: Grave Empire by Richard Swan and A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. And for Grave Empire, this is the fourth book by this author I've picked up at this point, and I have just continued to enjoy their works. I like what they're doing with this setting in this particular story. It is part of the same world as the other series that he's written, but you don't have to have read the other series by any means. And I do like that he really utilizes, it's my new buzzword when I talk about his works now, eldritch horror. It's eldritch horror fantasy, and that's a hybrid that I'm finding I really, really enjoy, and I think he does it really well. And then with Elizabeth Lim, this is a YA author, and I just find every time that I pick up one of her books, I just have such a good time with it. It's so fun. It feels like a return to the exciting adventure stories where everything is, you just always want to turn the page, and the world feels so fantastical and vibrant, and the characters have a lot of life to them. And I think that Elizabeth Lim is really good at establishing why what is transpiring in the story matters personally to the characters, and I thought that continued to be true in A Forgery of Fate. I'm trying to think if this is my favorite book by this author that I have read, because I've read the Blood of Stars duology, I've read Six Crimson Cranes, that duology, and now this one. So I've enjoyed all of those, and this one I think might have been my favorite. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see what else they do. I think they're always going to be the author I turn to when I'm just in the mood for a fun, adventurous story. Next up, we have newest fictional crush, and I am rewatching Fullmetal Alchemist, so kind of a return to Roy Mustang. My husband and I both, every time that he's on the screen, we're like, Roy's just so cool. And the first time I had watched Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, I had watched the dub, and my friend is currently constantly making fun of me because I am turning into a sub snob. And I know it every time. I'm like, I'm not normally like this, but I do think the sub is better. And I'm like, I say that for everything now. So yes, I am turning into one of those people. But because I'm rewatching it, I am listening to the sub for the first time, and the voice actor really, they just bring a certain quality to Roy Mustang that I very much enjoy. I love that character so much. I love all the characters in Fullmetal Alchemist. Well, your main cast of characters, of which there are a lot. I just think they're all so great. I love them so much. But yeah, Roy Mustang doesn't really get too much better than that. But as far as a book character, the book Yours Truly, which is a romance story, the love interest in that, it's a dual perspective, so I almost feel like saying love interest could apply to either character, but the main guy in the story was just so precious, and I thought he was really sweet, and he just is one of those characters where he tries so hard to ensure that he is expressing himself as clearly as possible, and he really wants people to ensure that they know exactly how he feels, and he wants to make sure their feelings are heard and understood. But in caring so much, he ends up sometimes accidentally getting stressed out and doing the very thing that he was nervous about in the first place. His experiences with social environments like parties or going out to dinner with a lot of people, he gets very nervous about those things, and it creates a certain level of stress for him. And then because he's stressed, he ends up saying or doing something or coming off a certain way that makes people think, like, what's this guy's problem? And then it stresses him out even more, and it kind of reaffirms, like, oh, this is why I get stressed. And I was like, oh, I feel like this too. So I don't know if that's so much a crush as it is just, am I just saying, like, I'm like that, so I have a crush on myself, because social interactions are scary. I don't think that's what I meant. I just thought he was really adorable, and there's a part where he writes a letter explaining to this one person, like, I'm very sorry if I came across this way. I really didn't mean it. I actually meant this, but I also recognize this. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy is super cute. And there was a part where he talks about how he knew from a young age that he was very aware that he's like, I can't do anything, because a teacher in his class was like, any of you can be president if you so chose. And he's like, I don't want to be president because of all the parades, or something like that I thought was really absolutely darling. And the next question is your newest favorite character as far as from stories that aren't just books. I mean, this is my newest favorite character. If I had to pick any character from any medium, it is, without a doubt, Mau Mau. I technically didn't start Apothecary Diaries this year. It's just that I'm continuing on with season 2, and Mau Mau is the best. I don't think I've seen anybody that's like, I don't get the hype for Mau Mau. Everybody gets the hype for Mau Mau. I think it is one of the most universally loved characters because she's just so funny and smart and dry, and she's somebody who you cannot help but be constantly captivated by. I love her so much, and she just, I want her to know that it's okay to let herself be loved too, because certain backstory things reveal why she feels like she can't. Anyway, I don't need to start dissecting Mau Mau as a character. She's just absolutely the best. But if I were to answer for a book character, I really loved Aram from Dragon Mage, and I think part of why I ended up loving that book so much is because I loved the characters. I loved both the characters in that story, the two friends that are your main perspectives. I absolutely loved the two of them. So that really, I think, heightened the reading of that story. The next question is a book that made you cry. There haven't been any that have been too emotional for me that I've picked up so far, but one that there were aspects to it that I found very applicable was Say You'll Remember Me. This is another Abby Jimenez book, and in it, the character's mom has dementia, and my grandmother had dementia, so aspects of how it takes a toll on the family to have your own loved one not know who you are or not know what's going on, and also just the pain of that, but also the little glimpses when you feel like, oh wait, they remember now and they're present and they're here with me, and then you kind of watch them fade. Those moments in the story were well captured, I thought, and they were very accurate to experiences I've had as well in my own family. Next up, we have a book that made you happy. And I think Shadow of the Fox, this is a reread for me. This is a buddy read with my patrons, and we did a whole discussion for the first book. If you're interested in that, I'll have my Patreon linked. But I found myself so happy to be back. And I always end up getting kind of nervous when I reread things that I enjoyed in the past, because I have this weird thing in my head that like, oh no, what if I hate it now? And when I was rereading that, I was like, oh yeah, this is so fun. It's great. It's kind of what I was describing with Elizabeth Lim's works. It was just so great to be back in a story where it felt like it always had something that was making you want to turn the page, and the pacing is great because it's like a mix of there being this big arc that is always present and motivating the characters to move forward, but also there are these mini arcs that feel somewhat episodic, and I would absolutely love if this book at some point became an anime. I think that would be great. I think it would be a wonderful thing to be adapted. And on that note, the next question is actually your favorite adaptation that you've watched, and I'm just going to say the two things that I've already said before. Apothecary Diaries and Fullmetal Alchemist, because Apothecary Diaries, I have not checked out the source material. I plan to. I'm definitely considering even doing a read along for the light novels after finishing season 2, because I want to keep going with the story, and I just know wherever it leaves off, I'm not going to be happy about it. I'm going to want to read more. So Apothecary Diaries, even though I haven't read the source material, as an adaptation, because it is an adaptation, it qualifies for the question. And then Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, I love absolutely the manga for this, and I think that the anime, once you get past the very beginning, because of the whole, there was an original anime and then there was Brotherhood, it starts kind of funny, but then once you get into the meat of it, it's such a true adaptation. The characters, the humor, the themes, the foreshadowing, it's phenomenal in pretty much every way. The next question I always think is a little odd because it asks you what's your favorite post that you've had this year, and there are ways that you can apply this because I post here on YouTube. You can say a video, or I do post on Instagram, so it could be Instagram. But I had a post for Witch Hat Atelier that I really liked how it turned out, because I love Witch Hat Atelier, and I think that the art is fantastic, and that includes the covers. So I already think that they alone are very photogenic. But I kind of laid out a bunch of books that I had, and the way I took the picture, it was like the books were the background, and just from a, I don't know, artsy angle, I don't know. This is why this is a weird question for me, because it's basically like, I really have great photography skills, and that's not what I'm saying at all. I just like how it turned out. I thought it looked nice. And once again, returning to a nice transition, as far as things that look nice, the next question is the most beautiful book that you've gotten so far. And I can't show it because I don't have it yet. I backed the Kickstarter for this. The cover artist who did Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, actually they did a Forgery of Fate that I mentioned before, and a lot of the covers that so many of us have seen and loved. That particular artist was selling an art book where it was a collection of a lot of their works, and it looks beautiful. Obviously I don't have it in my hand, so I can't look at it and tell you from the perspective of here, it's right here, tangible, I can show it. I can't show it in that sense, but I know it's going to be beautiful because their artwork is beautiful, and their presentation for how they've made the book, it looks so good, and I can't wait for when it eventually comes out. I know Kickstarters, oftentimes when you back them, it's going to be a while before you actually get the finished product, but I am so ecstatic, and I'm ecstatic for this individual because their artwork is amazing, and it's just great to see when artists are able to actually get to do their passion for their job. I think that's great. So I can't wait to get this book. It's gonna look so nice. The last question is a book to read by the end of the year, and I am going to be doing a buddy read for Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. So the books in that series, unless I really despise it and I DNF it, which I don't imagine is gonna happen, the books in this series. It is also a buddy read with Erin from Booked and Busy, whose channel I'll have linked. That's it though for the mid-year book tag. If you'd like to answer any of these questions, feel free to do so. If you want to elaborate on any of the books or stories that I mentioned, also feel free to do so. I'll have relevant information in the description bar down below as always, but thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later.